Good evening, YouTubers. Last time we were talking about a tank, an adiabatic tank. So, as you know, there's a cover that will not allow heat to be exchanged with the environment. So this is how it works. So this vessel is what we call adiabatic. Now there's an inlet and an outlet, and the inlet is the one that have the control valve, and there's also a heating element, an electrical heating element, where you can control basically the power into it. You will radiate heat into the water that is here. This vessel is full and it has a mass M, and this is a temperature T1 and this is a temperature T2, and this temperature here inside the vessel is the same the one at the exit, so this is T2 as well. And you can add some mixing here and so forth, but the big deal here is that we are measuring the temperature inside the vessel with a TI, a sensor temperature indicator, and there's a TIC, and the output for the TIC will go to the VVR, variable voltage regulator. So it's a way to control automatically how much heat will come out from this resistor element, that's QR, which is measuring watts or kilowatts for this case. So that's basically the PNID, and that we have a set point here. So that's okay. So the first equation that we developed last time in part 1 was that the change in temperature inside the vessel is going to be equal to the flow of mass M divided by the big M here. So there's a flow of mass here continuously, we call that M1, and that will be time T1 minus T2 plus whatever heat is coming from the resistance QR over big M Cp. And this is the heat capacity, or it's a constant value for water. For water, that Cp, as you might know, is 4.18 kilojoules kilograms C, and that will do. Now this equation, in essence, what we're going to do with it is run dynamics. This third part and last one is for dynamics. Typically, in a system like this, we run steady states, to ensure that we understand what are the possible steady state of this vessel with the parameters that we have at hand, and we do sometimes process control just to ensure that we can follow the set point, but sometimes we do what we call dynamics. In dynamics, and this is very interesting, in dynamics, basically what we said is something like this. Let's say that we have what is programmed here is CO, and that CO have a name, COR, typically that's what I call it, that goes to the resistance to control the power, the QR. That CO, which is from 0 to 100, is equal to a COR bias, or a value established at the beginning of the process, plus or minus a value of Kc times set point minus PV plus Kc over tau I. That's for a controller that has a PI. This part here is the proportional part. Now I'm going to write the integral of the error, but the error is set point minus PV dt from 0 to t, and this part here obviously is the part of the integral part. So that's what we call it. If we have a controller that has a proportional part and an integral part, then in dynamics what we're going to do is we're going to set this into manual. So we're going to set the controller to a particular place that is called manual, and in manual, basically this type of controller where the proportional and the integral depend on Kc, if we set that Kc equals 0, that will do is that the COR equals the COR bias. So basically when you are running the dynamics, the only thing that you have to do is to establish what will be the COR bias, and the system will go into whatever temperature that is within the COR bias steady state. So what that means is that if you have, like for example here, a graph where we have the PV, which is temperature in this case, and the COR here, and let's say at time 0, this is time here, you establish a value from 0 to 50%, something just to say the least. The vessel or the temperature inside the vessel might be at a given temperature. Let's say that it's at 25 degrees. And what's going to happen is that there's going to be a dynamic to get to that new temperature as you establish the 50%. Since you are not moving from 50%, so the system, when it gets to that steady state, will stay there, whatever this steady state value is, that we can calculate back again. But the important thing is how long it takes to the system to get to that steady state. Now, one thing that always we do when we are running dynamics is try to get this value. Now that I hit some 50, do some movement either to 75 or to 25, just to see what's going to happen. Like for example, if I move to 25, the system, what the system will do here is like running another dynamic, and now the temperature will drop to a certain point. And so like for example, a little bit higher than 25, definitely. Let me get this right. But not at 25, because I dropped 50 will guarantee this. This is 25%, will guarantee a higher temperature than 25, and you will see that in a second why, but it will be a new steady state. So you happen to have a second steady state, and this is very important for calculation of Kc and tau I, which are the PI controller, the PI parameter controller. So you need to know Kc and tau I for a PI controller. How you do that? Using this technique, which is called you are running the dynamics of this system, but in what we call open loop. This is what's called open loop. You are not controlling anything, you just establishing a bias and you let it go. So let's go back again and let's recalculate some of these parameters so we understand what we are doing. So we have a vessel, as always. It's adiabatic, the adiabatic vessel. There's an input here, there's an output, and there's a resistance value, some heat getting here. So you establish that this VVR, this is QR, that the VVR will be set to a given value from the TIC, but you are in manual. That's basically it. You only establish, let's write it here, you only establish a COR bias, and let's say that is 50%, and you let the system run at 50%. So what's going to happen is whatever flow is flowing through here, M1 at a given temperature T1, let's put a valve here, control valve, because this valve also have some setting in manual, whatever it is going to be. That's controller output 1 going to the line 1. This is line 1, this is line 2, so this is temperature T2. If we go back to this equation, to the system, the equation for the system, and we make this dt2 dt0, that's basically what we did in part 1. From part 1 of this series of videos, you end up having like T2 equal T1 plus QR m dot Cp, and from this equation you can calculate what's going to be T2 depending on what are the parameters here. Let's make the same parameters as part 1 just to make life easier. So in part 1 we have what we had was that M1 well, actually N1 maximum, we leave that at 0.126 kilograms per second. That's the mass flow, and that we said is that the CO1 was to be set at 30%, and with that we calculate what's the actual flow. So that's 0.126 times 30 divided by 100. If I remember, it was 0.0378 kilograms per second. And now, what else? What about QR? Well, QR is well, it's the same calculation. Basically, QR, or let's put it this way, for this system, the maximum heat that you're gonna get here is through QR max, and that value was set to 5 kilowatt. But since we are setting the COR bias to 50%, that means that the actual heat that you are producing on this element is called QR, and that would be 5 times 50 divided by 100% by 100, just to cancel the percentage, and that will give you 2.5 kilowatts. So that's the number. So that's what you end up. If you substitute some of this number, let's call here the T1 on this sample. T1, we kept that temperature to about 25 degrees C. That's the inlet flow. So it's easy to calculate. T2 will be 25 plus QR. That's 5. Notice that we use QR in kilowatt, not watts, kilowatt. That would be about 2,500 watts, but in kilowatt that's 2.5. And why kilowatt? Is because I'll tell you in a second. It's because CP is in kilowatt. The unit that I'm using is 4.18. Let me put the unit here as well, but it's kilojoules. Kilojoule, kilograms centigrade. So that's why kilojoules. So this has be that unit here is 5 kilowatt, but they need to cancel out so that everything end up only having degree. So when you do all that math, this end up being finally in degrees C. All right. So that T2 eventually will be as per I think that I have that here somewhere. T2 in this case will be and so T2 equal, let's fix something here. QR is not 5 but 2.5 because that's the actual value. Sorry for this, it's 2.5. There we go. And now we have 40.82. 40.82. So that degrees C. So the story is this. That's the first dynamic that we run on this. So it will look like this. Let's say that the initial value is 25 degrees. So we are starting the temperature on the system, which is we call it PV, and the CO. The CO was at 0. It was off. That's why the initial temperature is 25. As soon as we start this, we put this at 50%. 50%, this is time, and the temperature will, gradually start to increase to finally arrive to a new steady state. That new steady state is 40.82. What's going to happen next is, as soon as I change this to a new value, and we are saying that that's going to be 25%, the temperature right here will follow with that change. And there's going to be another dynamic that I'm very interested in that dynamic, and the temperature will drop to a new steady state. Let me put that here. So this is the story. We are basically using this method, which is called the Cohen-Kuhn method, to calculate the value of Kc and tau I. And we are using what is called the open loop method. What will that do for us? Let me write this right. The open loop method. So how we use the open loop method? Basically, we need two steady state value, and there's a one steady state here, and there's a new steady state here. I don't care about this starting point. I'm just care that the system arrived to a steady state, and then from one steady state you move to another. So, and that's the important part. Let's call this new steady state, I'm gonna call this PVSS1, and the new one is gonna call we're gonna call it PVSS2. You see, and the first PVs happen with 50%. So this value here is what I call this CO1, and this one is gonna be called CO2, or you can call it initial, or I want to call it 1. I don't like to use 1 because I'm gonna get confused with. So let's say we're gonna call CO initial and CO final. And so here as well, we're gonna change this number, and we're gonna call initial and final, and you will see why in a second. So the idea is to run a dynamics and arrive to a first steady state, and then change the bias to a new value and see the new steady state, setting in. So with that done, the first thing that you need in order to calculate Kc and tau I is what is called, through the open loop method, is what is called Kp. Kp is the process gain, how sensitive this process is. Now, to calculate that, what we have to do is, right here, is that Kp by definition is going to be the change in PV over the chain of CO. So basically that's what we have here, two well-defined steady state based on two well-defined bias, CO bias. So with that said, what we're going to do is PV SS final minus PV SS initial, that's delta, over CO final minus CO initial. That will give us Kp. The next things that we need is tau for the process, and dead time. Dead time, I'm gonna call it, sometime they call it like this, time theta, or theta time theta. Tau p is called sometime the process time constant, and it's defined as per the process that happened at a chain of 63%. You will see that in a second, what that really means, versus this guy here. This is called dead time. So I need these three parameters to be able to calculate Kc and tau I using the Cohen-Kuhn method, and we're going to be using also the Cohen-Kuhn tables to get that. So again, what we need is to run dynamics, get one steady state value, run dynamics again with a second chain on the bias, and get the second part, which is actually this part here, is what we need to calculate these two part here, tau p and theta, or time theta, or that time, is calculated from the dynamic of the second steady state value. All right, so what's going to happen is, now to calculate tau p and theta, or time for that time, basically is what we have done in the past. So what we're going to do is we're going to locate what's called PV of 63%, and that's going to be PV initial plus delta PV time 0.63. So delta PV, we know what it is, because delta PV is the difference between this guy and this guy. So if you know those two values, then you can calculate delta PV and calculate what is going to be finally the PV of 63. Now it just happened that let's put this here. Let's say that you have the first steady state value was here, and now you happen to have another steady state value here. So those are the two two steady state. This is what is called SS1 and this is SS2. So what I'm interested is trying to locate where this PV of 63% will happen, and that will be somewhere here, and you will locate that based on this equation. Let's put some number. Let's say that this value here is 20 and this value end up being 60. Okay, so what's PV of 63%? PV of 63% for this particular case is going to be initial PV, that's 20, plus 60, let's write it like this, 60 minus 20 times 0.63, and that will help us to locate a number here on the, let's write it like this. This is the 20 and this is the 60. So that 63%, it will happen somewhere here between these two numbers. So if I check this math, that will be, that's gonna be 40 somewhere here, 40.25. Oh, sorry, 40.20. There we go. And that will be somewhere here. And from the curve, I arrive here. That time there is what I call the difference between where I did the chain. The chain was started here. That's what I call time equals 0, because what we are really looking at is for the second dynamic, not the first one, but the second one, the one that I need to be sure that this curve start from a known value of a steady state value. All right, it's to arrive to a second value. So that's where we're starting. So this difference here between t0 and this time, and if I'm using this type of curve, I have to be a little bit careful. Let's say that I end up, this is 0 actually in this curve, and this is end up to be about, I don't know, 300, and for some reason this end up to be about 550 or 500. Let's say we're 500. So what's going to happen is that tau p for that process is going to be 500 minus 300, so that's going to be 200. And if the unit here are seconds, then we end up 200 seconds. So that's the tau p process, the time constant, what we call the process time constant for this system at 63%. That number will be the 200 shown here. Now what's going to happen with the 28% that we're talking, that's the dead time here. The dead time basically is follow a similar calculation. Right here, the PV, I need the PV of 28%. It's going to be the initial PV plus delta PV times, let me get this out. It's going to be delta PV times 0.28. So if I do it here, that would be initial PV is again this value, the initial steady state value, plus delta PV, that would be 60, the end minus the beginning, that would be 40, times 0.28, and that will be 31.2. So when I get that number somewhere here between 40 and 20, so I put the 30 here, so that would be somewhere here, and that would be actually what we call this time here will be theta. I want to call that theta for the dead time. So in this case, theta is going to be the dead time, and that's a different. Let's say that this theta here is about, I don't know, 400. Looks like in the middle. So this number here is 400. So that would be 400 minus 300, and that will be 100 seconds, and that's the dead time. So we got the three parameters basically. Actually, I got the tau p and theta, which is the dead time, and I only need kp. And let's put KP like this. For example, it's going to be 60 minus 20. That's delta. Actually, let me write it like this. Delta PV over delta CO. Let's say that's going to be 60 minus 20 over. Now, how you get here and how you got to this other steady state. Let's say that the CO for this one, for this curve, was set at 25%, and that the CO for the next one was set at 50%. So what's going to happen is this is going to be 50 minus 25, positive 1.6. It's very important that positive because it means that this system is reverse acting. So in other words, what reverse acting means, if for any reason this temperature start to increase, that's PV value, you want to shut this down. So it's going in the reverse direction. That's what we call this. This is the COR. So we call this reverse. A little bit, let me fix this. We call this reverse acting. All right, reverse acting. And now I got the three parameters. These are the three parameters that I need to go into the Cohen-Coon table and approximate, what would be a good values for Kc and tau I. So what is left is just to do dynamics. Now let's recover back again the differential equation for our system, which is this one, dt2 dt plus equal dt2 over dt equal m flow, mass flow divided by the big M, T1 minus T2 plus QR MCP. So that's the differential equation. If we want to do dynamics, we need the integrated form of this. We're going to use Euler. So the next, the integration of that by Euler will be something like this: T2 at time t plus delta t equal T2 at time t plus delta t parenthesis m dot over big M T1 minus T2, and this T2 is also at this time t. Let's put it that there. Let me fix it. So that's gonna look like this: T2t close parenthesis plus QR over MCP and close parenthesis here. So in order to do dynamics, I need the big M. That M is the total mass of the vessel. Inside the vessel, that M comes from the volume. Let's say that the volume of the vessel is 30 gallons. So basically convert that to liters, and then from liters multiply by the density of water, which is just happen to be 1 kilograms per liter, and that will provide a mass approximately of 113.55 kilograms. And that's the number that we're going to plug here on that M. Now, to do dynamics, it's a very straightforward thing, because basically you just need a table like this one, in where you have time and temperature. In this case, T2. At time 0, what we are saying is that T2 is 25 degrees, because that's our starting point. We are starting there, and we want to operate this until we get to the first steady state value, which is not really required. It's the second steady state value where you want the full curve. On the first one, it's just for checking. Remember, this, what's going to happen is going to drive us to the first steady state value. As I was saying, you start here. Let's say that the CO was changed. This is time. You change the CO to a 50% here, and then this will start to rise to get to the first steady state. So you get here. Now, whatever you do here, after you get to the first steady state, you can go up or down. If I go up, let's do up this time, and I go to 75% on the CO. This is CO and this is PV. What's going to happen is, starting from where I did the chain. Let's say the chain was here. This will go up to a second. So I have a first steady state here and a second steady state here. Alright, so this keep going this way. But it is here, from here, that you really care, and that's why you set t equals 0, because this is the dynamic that you really care for calculation of both tau p and theta come from this dynamic. Right? So this value here, SS1, can be calculated by steady state. This can be calculated by, as I said, by steady state method, or by the dynamic method, because you start at 25 and you until you get to the first steady state. But I think it's easier to do the steady state method, which means is that you're starting right here at the calculated temperature that for that steady state value was, I calculate here, 40.82. So you're starting your system at 40.82, meaning that your this is time, your CO is right here. Sorry for this. Your CO at time 0, the value here, let's say that this is 50 right there, but that's kind of prior 0, because when you are in actual 0, you are hitting now another value. Let's say that I follow this logic here, that I'm going to increase to 75% here, from 50 to 75. So I'm moving in the same line to 75. So I'm right here. So you can clearly see that my delta CO was 75 minus 50 equal 25%. So that's what I changed on this CO. But then this stay at 75, because basically what I want is this guy to move to the new steady state. So I got this value here is called SS1, and whatever new steady state I get, this is going to be SS2, right? So basically delta PV is a difference between SS2, whatever value I got there, minus SS1. You can call it, sometimes I call it like PV SS2 minus PV SS1. So that difference will allow me to calculate at least KP, because basically KP for this system is going to be PV SS2 minus PV SS1, all that divided by, in this case I have the numbers, but I kind of put it like this, 75 minus 50, and that will give us our KP. Again, since you're starting from a true steady state, you need to start from a value that is true steady state. 25 is not a steady state value. It just happened to be the initial value at where the temperature was in that tank. You need to operate that and find out whether that's a true steady state. But at 50%, the true steady state will be 40.82. All right. So, and that give us a good idea of what's going to be here on this region. We can calculate then what we call tau p, which is related to a 63% change of the system, and theta, which is basically related to 28%. Let me right here, this is related to the 63, actually I'll put it this way. This is more related to a change of 63% on the delta PV, and this is more related to a 28% on delta PV. Alright, so what is left is how we calculate the next value here. We're going to do at least one calculation by hand, but definitely this is better and to do this in Excel. Let's say at 10 seconds, what's going to be the new temperature? Then basically you just use this equation here. And the nice thing to use this equation is that pretty much everything is fixed, because the flow of mass is fixed, QR is fixed. It's not like when you're doing process control and QR is the manipulated variable. QR will start to change, but there's nothing here that change except actually the actual temperature T2. So let's do one hand calculation quickly here, and let's see where we're gonna get from here. To do that, Let me copy this so everybody knows what the value I'm going to be substituting. Let's see if I can get this right. Let me put it here. There we go. So this is a story. Let's see if I can get this better. So this is what we're gonna do. In this case, that's gonna be 25 degrees. That's the starting point. That's the 25 here. Plus, I said delta is gonna be 10. Now M flow. M flow is 0.037A. Big M, that's 113.55 plus delta. Sorry for here. Where we are. Time. Oops. Sorry. Times parentheses T1, that's 25, minus T2, that's 25 as well, plus QR. Now QR is 2.5. Remember we set this at I think that was 50% at the bias. The first steady state here is 50%. It's gonna be here, and let's see where. Oh, these are an example. This one. This is the one that we're gonna operate. So we're gonna set it at 50% and then perhaps do the second at 25. I can do it. It can go anyway. It can go 25 or 75. I'm gonna do the way it is here. So it's gonna be 50 and 25. So let's do the 50. For the 50%, remember, at COR equal 50%, basically what's going to happen is that the QR is equal QR max, which happen to be 5 kilowatt times 50 divided by 100, and that's where you get the 2.5. So that's the number that goes here, 2.5 kilowatt divided by the mass, which is 113.55, and the 4.18 for the heat capacity, and close these parentheses. So that will be, this is dynamic. Remember, we are running a dynamic here. The first part here is gone because it's 25 minus 25. This first part is gone, so the only thing that you have left is this part here. So that's gonna be 25 plus, if I get the 10 here, that's gonna be 25 divided by 113.55 and 4.18, and that would be 25.05 degrees C. So the increase was very little, but eventually, you keep doing that. So basically what I'm saying here is just right here, the new temperature, that's 25.05. Then for the next one, that will be 0, 10, 20. We go 10 by 10. So let's do this one as well, the 20, and so you see what's gonna be pretty much the same equation, except for that new T2 at 20 seconds. That will be the one at 10. The one at 10 is this one, so it's gonna be 25.05 plus 10 is the delta T times 0.037A over 113.55 time. Here, careful, this is T1, that will not change. T1 will stay at 25, but this one will do change, and that will be 25.05 plus 2.5, that will not change, divided by 113.55 and the 4.18 heat capacity, close parentheses. So now it's a little bit more complicated on the calculator, but not a big deal. So that would be 25.10, and that's the new temperature at 20 seconds. So, the idea is that you're going to continue on that because that's called dynamic. You're not changing anything until you arrive to the, like for example here, to this new steady state value, which is for 40.82. You start from 25. It will take a while to get there. But that's going to be either that 40.82 because you run the steady state value or the steady state method, or you operate the dynamic until you get to that value. You can use any of those two methods. Now, for the second part, definitely you have to use dynamic because you might know this value, this steady state value, but you want to operate what's the dynamic of that process. How fast it moves. Again, you can know this value and this value. You can get them through the steady state method, but the ideal thing here is to run this dynamic and to get to this value. You can confirm that this value is correct by the steady state method. So the only thing left now is to go to Excel and try to get this curve, this dynamic curve. Sorry for this. To get this dynamic curve, at least this one is the one that I'm interested, because it's the one that I propose in order to get KP, tau p. I call this theta or time theta. I'm gonna call from now on theta just to avoid confusion. It's dead time. How much dead time this process has. So I'm using the 28% calculation. That will do. Alright, so let's go to Excel, and when I get those three parameters, I will show you how you can get then KC and tau I from CoinCon. At least one version of it, because there's many. See you in Excel now. Bye. Well, we are here in Excel, so let's start this last part here. And what we're saying is we're gonna operate on dynamics. So we're gonna run this differential equation that we have here, but this is the integral form by using the Euler method. And basically this is the table for all the parameters that typically you might find in this type of PNID. Like for example, what is the QR max? That's just pure a number, a design number for this resistant value here. The COR bias, this is important. Basically this table here, the COR bias, I leave it, instead of having here, I put it down here as well, because it's more, here I can control this first dynamic that is not shown here. Here's the second dynamic. I always talk to you about not doing the first dynamic, just because there's no point to do it, because you already know the steady state value. This steady state value of 40.82, I take it from here, but I can definitely put the equation here, like the equation that which is basically for the when this value here goes to 0, the differential equation goes to 0, you can solve for T2, which I can put that number here, so you can see that's going to be equal T1 plus QR. Now I can see it's right here, divided by M flow divided by 4.18. So that's the same value that I had before, the 4.82. That's perfect. Now again, what I'm saying is that although the value is here, I don't need it. Actually, I can take it out, just not to confuse anybody. But at the beginning, this table comes from the process control table that I had before, except that this process control table has some value for tau I of 500 and Kc of 10. These values are out of the blue, so there's no science behind them. I just put them, and that produced this type of control curve. Now, in dynamics, we're gonna try to find out what are those values, what is tau I and what is Kc, based on dynamics. Again, the first table that you see here is pure just for doing dynamic and to see how long it takes from getting from an initial temperature 25 to 40.82. That's no big deal. You can run this for a while. It's going to take a while to get there, But the important thing that when it's there at that steady state value, that's when you start the Cohen-Kuhn method in essence, because you are looking for the second steady state value. Not the first one is important. You have to start from a first steady state value and then move to another one. To move to the other one, you have to move the COR bias from 50. Like for example, I move it to 25. You can move it to any other value, higher or below. The important thing is that with that 25%, you end up with a QR, the amount of heat produced by this resistance of about 1.25. And the temperature, the exit temperature will be lower, will be at 32. And it's the same equation as this, except that the COR bias was changed. And so I have now, check the name, T2SS1. That's where we start right here. And it's now this second dynamics, which is very important, because from that second dynamics is that we're going to get what is called tau p, the process time, and the dead time. And we're going to take a look to that in a second. So again, we start here, T and T2, because it's dynamic at 0 time. We start now at a steady state value of 40, almost 41, this value here, which is this T2SS1. Now we run dynamics. Dynamics, you use this equation here. All right. So when you run that equation, that will produce this curve here, nice curve, and it will get you to the next steady state value that is predicted here is 32.9, which is basically this one here, almost 33, as shown here. Excellent. Now, let's take a look here to what is inside. The first one is just coming from C17, which is this C17. I took that from where? C17, from here. I can take it from there, or I can take it from here. Actually, if you ask me, it's the same value, but personally, I would like to take it from here. It will not change anything. The important thing is that when you run then your dynamics at 10 seconds, this value, check it out what it is basically the dynamics of in this form, the Euler form, which is going to be the temperature above, that's the steady state value, that 40.82 something, the delta TC13 that's coming from here. Yep, and then the $10. Now check that pretty much everything is fixed except the temperature, including the QR is fixed, and this QR is this one here, because that's it's a fixed value of 1.25. You are running dynamics, so pretty much everything is fixed except the temperature itself that you had to, that's what we're looking for. So enter. Now if you run that, eventually it will start to cool down to this new temperature, 32.91. Excellent. So what basically we are saying is that we know the two temperature, the initial temperature and the final temperature for this process, and we are going from 50 to 25. So we know the COR bias, how the percentage is changing, and with that we can calculate KP value. KP value, as shown there, is the difference between this temperature minus this, and this COR bias F22 minus this one here that is 50. That will produce this KP value as shown here. Now, in order to locate, and this is also from the theory at the beginning of this video, you need to locate what is called PV of 63 and PV of 28. Now, double click here. As you can see, for the PV of 63%, you go from the initial value, that's C24, plus delta PV, that's this guy, minus this one, that's give you here, times 63 times 0.63, that hit about 35.8. And for PV28, we do the same thing, except that we change the percent, instead of 0.63, we go to 0.28% for the dead time. Now, what we need to do is to locate that 35.83. You can use perhaps that 35 might be somewhere here, 34.6 somewhere here. It's hard to, on this graph, with such a huge delta change of 5,000, to locate numbers. So you'd rather use the, in this case, the table. However, I can make this smaller to make life easier instead of be to 30,000, because you're only interested on this dynamic. I will say I will get to 10,000 maybe. Let's get to 10,000 and let's see how, you know, whether I can be able to read those numbers. Like for example, going back again, this is 35.8, 35.8 is almost, I can change this scale as well to make life easier, because it's going on a 2x2 basis, and I got a 36, almost 36 is somewhere here. And then when you start to move, you can see that it's somewhere around 3,000 more or less. And that's actually what I get here when but this is from the table. But if I start to, you know, modify this curve to make life easier, then you will be able to get a better idea of where, from the graph, where the numbers are. Where is the PV of 63 and where is the PV of 28%? Like for example, here I got 38.6. That's almost 39. That's right here. So you can see it's almost about 1,000. And I got 990 from the table, actually from here, from the dynamics of the second curve. Remember, this is the second curve. The first curve, I don't care much about it. We only care about you starting at a steady state value, and that's the 40.82, which is right here. That's the only thing that you care. Now, if I go to the table, it's a lot easier. Again, let me try once more here, fix this instead of measure 1, maybe measure 2, measure 1. Let's see. And I'm moving to 31. Actually, let's get to 31 here. And let's see how well it gets down. And 36. Yeah, now it's a lot better. So I can locate the numbers a lot better. That's 35.8. 35.8, almost the 36 right here. So, and on the 38.6, somewhere here. About 1,000. I would say that would be kind of a, if you are trying to use a graph, you have to have a, you know, more information here in the table. Actually, let me try the last time here. Minor, major. Let's drop this to 1,000 maybe. And I think 200. That looks better. And maybe no more than the 6,000 here. 6,000. Just to improve the graph a little bit, so I have more room to work on it. How about 500 here, maybe? That looks better. Let's see if with that I can get a better job. 35, going back again, 35.8, 35.8. It's almost 36, almost 36. It doesn't get to the 3,000. It's a little bit. It's a little bit here, close to, but not 3,000, I believe. Need to check on that. And how about the 38.6? 38.6 is almost 39, somewhere here. So I would say close to 800, maybe. Now let's verify this number. So it's as easy as that. So we are looking for 35.8 for the first one. 35.8. So we go here. $35.8. 35.8. I think I need the other decimal place. It was 38.80, 35.83, 84, 84. That's what I need. 35.84. 35.84. 84 right here. 2980. That looks better. 35.84, 2980. Let's modify that a little bit. So this one will be 29. It was, let's see. So it's 35.84. 2980. And how about the 38.61? 38.61. 38.61, 62. I would say that, yeah, I would stay there. 980. 38.61. That would be 0.62, but 980 would be close enough. 980. 980. All right, so now with those numbers, basically we can calculate now using COENCON table. I will use a shortcut. I was thinking about it. Instead of using COENCON table, I will use the definition of KC. In most cases, this is good enough. Let me put it this way. I don't use strictly the table of COENCON when I'm doing this kind of a control process. I like to, because I know that it's going to be tuned a little bit further as I operate the process control. Like for example, right now I'm using this equation that shows there. What it is 1 over Kp time tau p over theta. The process time divided by the dead time to the elevated to the 1.22. All right, that's Kc value. Now, tau I is interesting. Tau I, sometime you can go around and say, hey, this is pretty much the same of the process time. So in other words, the integral time, you're going to make it as the process time, and you're going to make it 2980. You could in one, there's some cases in where you might want to, be more, don't have too much integration into it. So that means that the Ti must be, that Ti might be like twice the value that you have here. So twice meaning that we multiply by 2. So you can have this one. So I would say this is kind of the calculation here is the moderate one, or the one that very typical value that you might use. I would say this is typical, and this is more relaxed. This one in particular, or moderate. I would put moderate. Typical and moderate. You might want to use this, but if you want to really slow things down on the integral part, then you use a higher value of the predicted by the model here, by the open loop model. The open loop model is predicting 290, 80, and if I go with this one, the integral part would be smoother. So instead of instead of cycling, it will try to get into the value that you want, either from above or from below, depending where you are. Let's try on the process control now that we have an idea what the parameter is going to be. Like for example, I know that the Kc is 12.27. Actually, the value that I set before, I think that was 10. So I can use on my dynamics this value here. That's what I will do. So let's go back here. Instead of having this 10 here, I'm gonna use equal, go to dynamics here and put that value. Bingo. Now, how about the tau I? Definitely it's not 500. What I can do here is set this equal to, and now let's go to dynamics, and let's start by the moderate value, this one here. Enter, and as you can see, the curve drastically changed to a very smooth approach to the set point. Instead of doing any oscillations, it went right through smooth and finally get there. It's, you know, there's no oscillation, so probably this is heavily damped. Versus if I use small value here, tiny value here will cause this to oscillate. I can put a small value. What is a small value here? I would say anything about below 500. Let's say 500. I can start to see some oscillation as last time. You can see that there's some oscillation. It went up, it went down, and then went up, and so they control the operation of the COR as well. Now, if I use something even smaller than that, like 100, it will oscillate harder, and that's what is happening. You see, and you don't want that. It might cause some trouble in the control system. So I'd rather have now about, there was a value close to 3000. I want to put 3000 here on the tau I. Again, very smooth, I would say. So 3000, and the system within an hour was right there at the set point, less than an hour. And I can say about the 5000. It took a little bit longer, but not a big deal, you know. So I would say running the dynamics, and this is just the conclusion because this video is about to finish. By running the dynamic, we were able to calculate what is Kp, and actually, and let me stress this point, Kp, you don't need to run the dynamic to know what Kp will be. You only need the steady state value according to the bias that you are setting. Kp does not require you to run dynamics. PV of 63 and PV of 28, definitely you need to run the dynamic. At least the second part, which is the one that we are really interested. Why not the first one? Because on the first one we are starting, let's say from, it was here somewhere, from, no, it's not here. The initial temperature, actually for the first one right here. For the first part is at 25. 25 is not a steady state value. It's not a steady state value, meaning that you have to be sure that for the first COR bias, which is 50%, you arrive to a steady state value. Either you calculate it like this, 40.82, or you just run the dynamic to get there to 40.82, which, as I said, it's better to use the steady state equation, this equation as steady state, and resolve for T2, and that's what you get here. The same here. You change from 50 to 25, you calculate what is the new T2, and then, as you can see here on this Kp value here, you only are using values from steady state, either from the COR bias and the impact on temperature, the new COR bias and the impact on temperature, and then the difference between this and divided by this over this, you know, the difference here, and eventually you get the Kp value. Anything else? Nope. PV of 63 and PV of 28, it come out right from here, from the dynamics, and that's why you have to know the dynamics. And from the graph, it's kind of hard to get those numbers, but the graph will have to have more points here, and perhaps make it smaller, or in the range that you're really interested, and you can get those numbers from the graph. But if I have a table like this, make life easier getting from the table. I was saying I'm not using directly the Cohen-Kuhn table. I'm using more this calculation, which for me makes more sense. Actually, those are the ones that I typically use when I looking for control parameters, kind of run the open loop, do some small calculation for Kc as shown here, and just set the Ti value to whatever the processing time was calculated, which in this case was 2080. Now you can use a factor of those of 2. This is typical and moderate. Moderate is kind of a slower to get to your temperature, but it will. Extremely important that what I'm gonna say now. If I go to process control here, I want to eliminate tau I mean the integral part. Make this number huge. How about, what is huge number? 1 e to the 6 is big, it's 1 million, and that will disappear the integral. And when the integral disappears, you see that if you are using only proportional control, because that's basically what this boils down to, you will not get to the set point that you want, the 50. Remember, this process is auto-regulate, and process that auto-regulate requires that you have a PI controller. This is not one of those processes that do not auto-regulate. This auto-regulate. Since it's auto-regulate, it's good to have PI controller. Right now I'm putting it only a P controller basically, because by making this tau I so big, pretty much it's gone. The integral part, remember, is Kc over tau I, and tau I this big, the integral part is pretty much gone. You don't have any integral part here on your controller. Now if I return this back, as you know, it can be as big as 10,000. Let's put 10,000. You get the job done. It just takes longer, almost to 6,000 here, and it's going up very slowly. That's why you don't want to have this value that big, because you want this to move faster. So the 3,000 seems like, well, pretty good. I'm using 10 here, back again, and here is the 3,000. Now instead of 3,000, I thought to put here 1,000. Put the 1,000 here. Yeah, a little bit oscillation. No, you don't want 1,000 because it oscillates. Definitely the numbers makes a lot of sense now, because 3,000 definitely it would not oscillate, and that's great. Well, folks, that's more than enough. There's a lot of material here for you to think about it, and why we need to run dynamics to calculate, at least to understand the process control parameters. Whether you are working with a proportional controller, you only worry about Kc, but if you are working with a proportional integral controller, then you need to worry about both. In this case, Kc and dead time. Well, folks, more than enough. See you in the next one. Bye.